What's going on, guys? Three Wheels in a Block back again. We're in the garage with the 77 C10 and it's time to put down some paint. Oh yeah. I think y'all can already see it's gonna be red. So colors Victory Red. We're getting paint. Let's see, we got our paint from Teck. You can find this stuff on eBay. It's actually some really decent quality paint. It's not that bad. In fact, it's better than some of the other stuff that I've used in the past. I used some Nason before, and this is a better quality product than Nason is. At least they're the line you get at the parts store. You know my preference is back here on the rack is PPG, but I didn't have the stuff to make the color. I was out of clear base, so we're going to be using the eBay paint kit in Victory Red. So let's see, we're going to be using the Teck. There it is right there. HPF 450. And the reducer, which is the first time I've used this U-Pole System 20 UP2145. I have no complaints, it works good. Of course, I've not found anything U-Pole that I don't like. So I got the reducer here, and I got all kinds of products here. You know, I'm not brand specific. There's some Evercoat, Speedacoat, U-Pole Fantastic Glass, wheel filler, you know, all kinds of goodies. So anyway, the color Victory Red, U-Pole reducer. This is the primer that I use as a backup because I ran out of my other primer from Speedacoat, and it works pretty good. I can't complain. I have no idea how old this can is. I acquired this from a body shop 2 or 3 years ago, and it's really been sitting since then. I don't know how long it was sitting before I even got my hands on it, but it did sprout pretty good. So I don't even know if this stuff exists anymore, actually. I don't know. I have no idea. But it got the job done. This is what I'm going to be putting on first. The Speedacoat 1K acrylic sealer in gray, and there's about maybe a third of a can. Probably a quarter. Probably not enough to do everything I need to do. We're going to make it work anyway. I may throw a little bit of reducer in there to stretch it just a little bit further, which is extremely dangerous. But Marco Colbert, Speedacoat Refinish Network, he does stuff like that all the time. So if it fails, just blame Mark, right? Alright, with that said, I'm going to throw some wax and grease remover, which I'm using the, I don't even know what brand it is. I think it's Master Pro around here somewhere. Yep, over here. Shop's a mess. You guys know the deal. Every time I go to paint a truck, what happens? Or paint anything, it's always a mess. Wax and grease remover. I'll wipe this thing down, and I believe wipe it down, blow out the dust out of the back, probably get that fuel tank out of there. I think the tailgate's fine. Get the paper out of there, and then we're gonna get this thing painted. I've been taping and prepping all day, including fixing this door, just so I could put some paint on the thing. So let's get to work. So I have one of my subscribers, actually several subscribers, have asked me to slow down the video footage and give some actual paint speed and pass speed with the gun. So I do read comments, and I slowed this one down for you guys. I'm using a 1.3 tip. This is the Teck Victory Red paint. The mix ratio is 1:1. As you'll also see here, I'm working myself with a very narrow fan because the space between the bumper and the front grille is pretty small. Just kind of using almost like a dusting technique to get the paint down in that area. Not applying a lot of paint because we don't want any runs. We're just getting nice, good coverage. One thing I will say is you can see the plastic between the fenders is moving a lot. I do not at all recommend using plastic in this way. If you do use plastic, make sure it's nice and tight, because if it's flopping around like that, it can throw particulates in the air, which can land in your paint, which just makes more of a mess for you to have to clean up before you go to the next step, if you catch it before you go to the next step. Now moving around here to the driver's side of the truck, you can see I start by cutting in the inner portion of the fender well. Depending on how you do your painting and what's comfortable for you, you may choose a different technique. This is the particular technique I've used here. It just varies depending on the job of how I do it. Typically you want to cut the bottom portion of your fenders in first, because you'll come back like I'm doing now and run your paint back over that. So that's usually what I'll do. You can see this gun's got a nice, pretty decent pattern as far as the fan width. And we're just laying on our first coat of base, nice and even, 50% overlap, working our way all the way up the panel. Now one thing you'll notice here is that I stop, go over, grab my air hose, and pull it around the truck. Now, in the past, I've just grabbed the hose and just pulled on it, drag it around. However, if that hose gets snagged on something, it can tip something over, or it could possibly pop an air fitting loose, and then you've got whatever air flopping around, possibly damage your vehicle or throw something into your paint. So slow down when you're painting, take the time to move things where they need to be at, and you will thank yourself when you get to the end of the job. Now roll around the A and B pillar at the top of the door, you can see now, and working my way down the door as opposed to what I did on the front fender, going from bottom to top. So you can do it either way. People have opinions about which way works better, and in this video I'm just showing you that you can literally do it either way and have similar results. So don't focus too much on, oh, I got to do top to bottom or bottom to top. Do what works best for you. Just remember to maintain that 50 to 75% overlap as you see me doing here on the door, and your paint will come out fine as long as you're shooting just a solid base color and clear coat. Of course, candy's different, and you saw that on the Paul Hunter Camaro. Now you'll notice I'm using a panel technique on this truck. So since we're using a solid base coat color, it's just a solid red, did the front fender, then move to the door, and then I'll transition to the bed. So depending on how you're shooting your surfaces and what you're painting, you may or may not use this technique. Panel painting is a pretty effective way to work each piece. That way you make sure you got nice even coverage. If you are using a metallic, you can also do paneling, but you will want to do a full pass with your drop coat, which basically means walking from the front of the vehicle to the back of the vehicle. You see I'm working the small area between the truck bed and the cabin. This is used when you're not removing the bed from the truck. Ideally you'd remove the bed because you're going to get your best coverage by doing it that way. You can narrow your fan down and work your paint in between that gap, because typically it's wide enough just to get the paint in there, and it worked well for this one. You can see I dropped down to the bottom of the bed to cut in the lower section of the fender first, and my reasoning for that is, one, you won't miss it if you start there, and two, you won't blow additional paint to the top of the fender or top of the bed when you go to lay your color in. And three, I'll just go ahead and add in, I was almost out of paint in that cup as you saw me do a quick paint refill. So because I was almost out of paint, perfect time to run in that small section that you know you're gonna have to come back and make another pass over, which the lower arch of the bed or the fender is always a good location for that. Now you see I'm working my way from bottom to top, just tying in those ends, and then you'll see I'll do a walk from the back of the bed to the front of the bed and front to back, just walking the panel nice and even, wrapping around the back of the bed to get nice even coverage all over the panel as I work the color into the truck. There's no need to rush here, just take your time, let the paint do its work. You don't want to pause in one spot, of course, and cause a run, but you don't have to go zipping across the panel. I know when I first started painting, I used to be so terrified of runs that I would not get good coverage because I was going past the panel way too fast and I had to slow it down. So this is a pretty decent pace here. You can see just kind of walking from one end to the other, keeping the gun nice and even with the panel. Alright, so here you have a slightly different angle of the work over on the passenger side of the bed, starting down at the bottom side of the fuel filler. And as you'll see, I come across right off of the cab corner and immediately transition into the inner portion of the fender. Again, like I said, you want to try to do this towards the beginning of your painting of the panel because everything else will work its way into it. I'm working the area in at the lower portion of the bed. I bring this lower section up to the top of the wheel arch, and then we'll walk the entire panel from front to rear or from back to front. That'll allow a nice smooth pass on filling the panel in and make sure I continue to maintain the 50 to 75% overlap. Generally speaking, with base coat, 50% overlap is fine. Red is transparent, more transparent than some other colors. So that's why I do a little bit larger overlap just to get good coverage on each coat. Now over on the hood, you can see I'm laying the band in around the outside of the hood first. And I typically do this because once you get to the top or the flattest portion of the hood, you don't want to necessarily wrap ends if you don't have to. This keeps me from wrapping ends, and it also keeps me from creating runs on the very end. But you'll notice when I get to the top of the hood, you'll see me transition from a locked wrist pattern to a flip wrist, or you'll see the spray start and stop at the end of the panel. This will keep you from creating runs at the very end. Now I've got long arms. You can see I can easily hit the center of the hood of this truck. If you don't have long arms like me, you may want to get you something to step on if you need that. Do not overreach, because if you overreach, then your fan pattern will go from flat to at an angle and you won't get the same coverage. So that's very important. And you can see I'm taking my time walking the panel back and forth. Now you'll see this is a little bit faster pace than what I was using on the side of the truck, and I actually turned my fluid up here because on a flat panel you don't typically have to worry about runs. So fluid's up, pressure's up just a little bit, and laying down the base coat nice and smooth. Matching up my center section, and because we're shooting a base coat clear coat, no problems as far as striping or anything. Maintaining the 50% overlap. You can see you get nice even coverage, and you can see how well this high-tech paint covers. Very, very good hide considering this is red, and reds and yellows, oranges, very transparent, and they will show just about anything in most cases. So that's one reason we're using the large overlap. You can see I'm working the band in here. I'm actually going to switch my position because of the space in the garage. I'm going to make sure I get a nice wrap on that band. Back across the top of the hood. And again, you can do the band first, you can do the band last. I usually try to do the band first before I get to that edge. That way when I lay my last pass on the flat surface or whatever edge I'm working on, I'm done with that panel. I don't have to throw any additional overspray back into the fresh paint. Now here you can see the base coat is flashing out pretty well, and it's completely flashed out over here on the truck. You should have a nice semi-flat sheen. You can see there's a little bit of paint there on the door still drying out, with the flat sheen along the sides of the bed, and that lets you know your base coat is pretty much ready for clear. Now of course, follow the manufacturer's steps and make sure that you wait the appropriate window, but this base coat is ready for clear. Moving on to the clear coat, you see I'm running the band first, got the wrist locked in, And watch as I come across here. I'm actually going to keep my wrist locked, following the edge of the panel. As you can see there, gives me a nice smooth transition. And as you see, the gun is in one angle. Transition to the front, same thing. This is the Mark 1 NV1, in case you guys are wondering. Nice wide fan pattern. I like using it on large panels because it gets a lot of coverage really quick. See, I head up there in the center of the hood. You can start on the end, you can start on the center, however you want to do it. Like I said, I've got long arms, so I generally will start in the center of the panel, work my way towards the edge. Now you will notice when I'm painting, from time to time you'll see me make a gun adjustment, and that is typically because I did not get it exactly where I wanted it at when I started spraying. It's no error on the gun, that's just an error on my part. Probably should do more spray outs than I do. Typically I know just about where the gun needs to be at, and I usually just roll with it, and if I need to make a small adjustment, I'll just make it on the fly. Going to finish the clear on the rest of the hood. Watch as the center pass is roughly 50% overlapped what was existing there. I did refill the cup between the driver's side and passenger side of the hood. You can see the nice smooth even motions as motion as I'm laying the clear coat down. Not moving too fast, giving the clear enough time to hit the panel, giving it enough time to lay out. It's very important. I am using a slow activator, and that will allow the clear to lay out even more, but it's important to get enough product on the panel the first time, because if you do not, then you will end up with orange peel or dry spots. So you can get orange peel from not enough and from too much. Alright, we're transitioning over to the body of the truck now. You see I'm hitting the band or the inside of the fender first. Then I'll work my way into the rest of the fender. And yes, I did start at the bottom. Most people start top to bottom with shooting clear. I always hit the insides of every fender well first. That's just what I do so I don't miss it. Sometimes I'll even hit the bottom portion of a rocker panel so I don't miss it, because in the past I have missed those areas where I've gone top to bottom and just not gotten coverage down there. So that's generally where I start at now. So you see the front fender was the bottom to top. You can see the big wide fan there. That's really laying that clear out nicely. Then we transition over to the door. I'm hitting the top portion of the A pillar, and then I'll hit the B pillar, and then you'll see that I start to work myself all the way down the door. And I'm actually turning the gun depending upon which way I'm shooting. Because the fan is vertical, I actually turn the gun at about a 45-degree angle to catch both the A and B pillar. That way I don't have to adjust the fan. And you'll notice I keep pausing. I'm watching the clear that applies to the door to make sure, one, that I have enough coverage and not too much coverage, because you want enough for the clear to stick and you want it to lay down nicely. This is SMR 42. It's a high solids clear. It's a lot thicker than the Glamour clear and some of the other products. So it's important to get a good bond on your first pass. A lot of times you can just do one coat of this. This particular truck is going to be an example of that. Around the back of the truck, starting again at the wheel arch in the lower portion of the bed, and we'll work our way up the truck bed, filling in all the areas. You can see I'm working every area that I typically would miss first. So the back inner portion of the bed, the areas around the lights, the lower portion of the quarters, the insides of the fender wells, all those are my trouble spots, and that's why I'm hitting them first, because I have missed those in the past. So I want to make sure that I get everything covered well. And yes, you do see a spray light on my gun. That is a light that I picked up at a local hardware store. It's not a gun buddy, but it does a good job of helping illuminate the area, especially in the dark areas of the shop where I don't necessarily have the best light. And that just helps me see how much more clear I need to apply in certain areas. So you can see here, just walking the panel down, nice and even, all the way down. All right, the 77 C10, aka hot sauce. Yeah, the Glamour Clear does some good stuff, that's for sure. This camera lens is cracked, so it may be distorting the view just a little bit, but yeah, she's on point. I'll give it that. Came out really good. I'm happy with that for sure. Rest of the truck came out pretty decent. Lot of body work. I mean, a lot of body work. This thing was definitely not close to perfect. It's a lot better than it was. I'll make a good runaround pickup truck. Went ahead and sprayed up this lower valance down here. Guess that's what that is. Got that sprayed up. Everything came out really well. I had one run on this corner of the bed. I'm not sure how I got that. However, every time I paint a truck, I get a run in the exact same spot. And I think it must be the fridge, because I can't think of anything else that would cause it. There's a transition of space. Of course, there's junk all on the floor, and that's probably part of my issue, but it's not exactly even, so I step up a little bit to get around this, and that's probably where that run comes from. So I'm going to deal with that very soon and make sure that my paint space is consistent all the way down, so I have the correct transition of space, and I don't have issues like, let's see if I can get you guys in there. Yeah, right there. So anyway, aside from that, everything else looks pretty much spot on. So pretty impressive considering what we had to work with. And I did find a dent on this fender last night after I put the base coat on. So I went back and sanded it down, added a little bit of filler there, and you could not tell there was a dent there. I mean, yeah, that came out really good. I'm happy with that. A lot of work on these fenders, even though they were brand new. There were dents and stuff all over the place. Both of them were creased along the body line, so we got that worked out pretty decent. So yeah, I think it'll work. I'm gonna let the paint finish curing up, and then I'll come in and unmask everything. See how consistent my pattern is between here. Oh, there's another sag. I don't know if the camera picked that up or not, but yeah, there's a little sag across there. So a little sag to take out, but it's pretty minor. It's an easy spot to get to, so that's nice. Thank you guys for watching this video on the 77 C10 pickup truck. More videos to come where we finish reassembling this thing and get it ready for delivery to its new owner. My name's Erwin. This is 3 Wheels on a Block, where we're giving back what time is taken away. We'll see you soon.